have our opening prayer flag salute. We open the phone prayer line. Let's pray. Most precious Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you today, Lord. We thank you for the opportunity to live in such an amazing community, Lord. Thank you for the many blessings you provide us, this community. As we come together tonight to visit the city of Newcastle, Lord, we pray that you lead, guide, and direct us in all that we do. Help us to make the decisions that are in the best interest of this community. I ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Possible action on any items removed from the consent agenda. There be no action on that agenda item. Item number 6, discussion of possible action on adjusting the utility account number 06-1255-00 at service address of 212 Northwest 24th Place, Marcel Vasquez, Villela. Is there the applicant here or a member of the representative of the applicant? Okay. Due to the language barriers, it's recommended that they not appear in council based off of what's in the file. It looks like there was a large spike that was showing up on their April bill. Okay, and they provided a repair bill. So I'll make a motion to adjust the April 2022 water bill to the average prior 12 months.
Second.
Motion second for adjustment of water bill.
Mike Fullerton.
Yes.
Tony Klein.
Yes.
Gene Reed.
Yes.
Lindsey White. Yes. Carl Nell.
Yes. Item number 8, discussion of possible action on the redistricting of council wards. Oh. Thank you. Sorry about that. Get right over it. Item 7, discussion of possible action going out to bid for the construction of the Tri-City sewer line.
plans for the Tri-City Sewer Line, which will come around the service road, and then, of course, it crosses 37 Highway, goes along the easement that we obtained from the nation, and goes into the first manhole to the south. Those plans have been approved by DEQ. We're ready to go out to bid. However, I would ask that if council chooses to approve, this would be contingent based upon ODOT's approval for us to go ahead and lay that line due to their planned work in that interchange. I talked to Kenny this morning about it, and he had sent this to them, but apparently none of us had heard anything back from him. And that's why I called him to see if he did, and he did not.
Go ahead and make that recommendation so that if you get to the point that you get an answer from ODOT, you can go ahead and solicit bids.
Right. Yes.
Oh, you see motion?
Yep.
Okay. Motion approved agenda item 7, going out to bid for construction of Tri-City Sewer Line.
Contingent.
Contingent upon, ODOT.
I'll second.
Motion second for approval item number 7, which is contingent.
Yes.
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 Yes. Item number 8, discussion of possible action on redistricting of council wards.
So we had made contact with ACOG and requested their assistance to help us redistrict the wards after the 2020 census. And they provided us with 2 versions. Or was anybody able to bring that up? No? Okay. So version 1, and it was in your packets, version 1 provides a very smooth, equal distribution of population among the wards. However, the actual wards themselves are very sketchy. I mean, they've got zigzag lines, and it may be extremely tough for any citizen to actually determine who represents them based on the way those boundaries are drawn out in version 1. Version 2 has the very smooth boundaries. They're boxed and clearly have the distinctions between ward boundaries, but the population distribution is not nearly as equal as version 1, although it's not bad. I mean, it's still fairly equal. It's not as good as version 1.
Version 2 is meet all statutory requirements.
It does. Yes, both of these are fine. He provided, or ACOG provided us that information that, the differences between version 1 and version 2, and you can clearly see that, but.
Question, what currently is the current layout? What's the distribution like?
That I do not know. I didn't look at that. Did he?
My
did he talk to
curiosity
you
would
about
be,
that?
what is the absolute need to make the changes? I mean, without seeing that distribution of,
Yeah.
are we improving anything? If we're not, then it's just.
Is it just a new neighborhood?
Well, it's more population, of
Well,
course.
I get that.
And depending on where those people have moved into, it increases the more people for one ward versus another.
And I 100% understand it.
Right.
I was wanting to know if we look at our existing ward boundaries and determine what the current distribution of citizens was. And compared to this, are we gaining anything by changing ward boundaries?
Well, and part of what they said is our current one, we are like the only city that they work with that it wasn't by the census tract. And so I don't know how we're going to be able to determine what those numbers were. I guess we can go back and look, but what they've done now is what they've done with everybody else. They use the census tract numbers to do the line adjustment for the population. So before it was not by census tract.
At all. So both 1 and 2 versions of this are both by census tract.
Correct,
but-
and that's what every city,
Sure.
everybody else does.
Oh, yeah. I use it for other-
So, and that makes it so for longevity, then you'll always use census tract and have those
More accurate,
numbers.
too.
More accurate numbers, correct.
So that would be option 1.
Both of
No,
these were
both
based
of
on the census tract. Our current ones were not.
But we still, even holding it up against each other without the numbers, we still don't have that visual either, though. That, or the numbers to go with each.
I would like,
Yeah.
I mean, my question is, one, we're gonna create confusion no matter what we do.
Right.
It needs to be for a benefit. Now, if it's a benefit to get into compliance with something, I understand that, but if it doesn't mean much, I mean,
There's the current
This is
one,
the current.
current ones. But of course, like you said, they don't have population distribution.
So there's the biggest change in 3.
Everything goes on 8,000.
Yeah,
Two and three are
that's
the
true.
biggest.
Yeah.
so I believe
The biggest change is 3.
2 comes all the way down to here, right?
Correct,
With
it's
one.
change.
2 and 3 change pretty significantly.
Three does. The one.
Yeah.
No, one
Here.
comes down to here.
Oh, this is 1. But this shows you between, there's very
I
little.
looked at these.
Here, let me see that one.
You might see that?
You see where,
Is that one? Yeah.
yeah,
It's lower, 2 and 3 made the change.
This is the one y'all recommend, right? 2.
Yes.
and really the only changes 1 and 2 are the little piece of Bradford, it would put all Bradford together. We were just noticing that, and then whatever that is down on between the yellow and the green, the 1 and 4, there's a little blip on 2, or 1 that's changed between 1 and 2. And then the bottom rectangle of 1, blue, goes to, that changes too. There's not a lot of changes between 1 and 2. Hold up that 1, the 1 and 2 next to each other. I know. Vanna? See the yellow and the pink, they change a little bit there. And then there's Bradford's over there in the green and yellow, up in the top right. And then whatever that is on Southwest 16th and Portland, there's a little jag on 1 that's not on 2.
I think this is Country Club right here.
Yeah.
No, it's not. That's Country.
Not a lot of difference, but, I mean, Gene's right, you can use H.E. Bailey on both of those as a line, which is a good descriptor, verbal descriptor.
Yeah.
But I like the census tract code because there's never a question. If the person wanted to look up their census tract code, they can tell us immediately.
Correct. And all these are available, will be available on the website, so they'll be able to see where they are and what
I don't know how much population.
That's how
Vote
we
for council, you vote for.
Between 1 and 2, I think 2 is
Yeah.
easier for people.
We use Rurality, we use census tract code for Rurality, what I
You
do.
don't need
Like,
to
I
read
would
and
love
have
all
it
that.
read.
Well, definitely like that.
Well, we need to move our mics over.
What's wrong? No one can hear us?
No,
I know, I've been accused of being
they
soft-spoken.
can hear me, they couldn't hear you.
Thanks.
I have no shame in that.
I mean,
I'm who I am.
I don't like the way this, like, 1 cuts out Bradford in a little,
Yeah, I don't like.
I don't like that at all. And it adds that, I like the clean lines of this. If we need to switch, that's my preference.
Like Gene and Mercy said, I do like the turnpike being a delineator. That's easy for people to know which ward they fall into. And 2, everything like this is pretty clean. Very, so there's not the jogging to Farmington or anything like that, trying to grab something that's really like,
Especially for the Bradford people, them being in 2 different ones, they just need to know, maybe Bradford 1 through 6, you're in the same one. To me, that would be much easier for them at least.
Yeah, I agree. I like version 2 myself.
version 1 even grabs that part of Farmington.
Is it Farmington? I was wondering if it was Farmington that
So that's-
it had, okay. I didn't want to say that without.
Everybody's okay with 2, I mean, I like 2.
I like the consistency of having the census tract.
If council chooses to approve this, then we will come back in August with the legal language for the ordinance.
Does it affect any city? Does it affect any of the 4 wards currently where we have a member?
I'm not, I don't know if you are or not.
No, I don't think so.
And I think it is.
Well, you're at large, you're still in two though.
Well, that's what I'm saying, the four of you all, does it affect the four of them at all? To my knowledge, it does not, right? I mean, that, you might want to know that before you.
It may be what it is.
Yeah.
Hey, Gene, it's either you or me. I'll have to step back and let you have it.
Just the language part.
So we need to vote for
Yeah.
which version?
Yes, and then we'll come back with ordinance.
Okay. Make a motion that, item 8, discussion possible actions on the redistricting of city council wards, that we choose council, we approve version 2 of the city ward maps.
Second.
Motion is second for approval of item number 8, selection of version 2 of the two proposals.
Mike Fullerton.
Yes.
Tony Clay.
Yes.
Dean Reed.
Yes.
Marcy White. Carl Nell.
Yes. Item number 9, monthly treasurer's report.
Didn't see that today. Did that go out today?
No.
Friday, we went out
Friday.
Oh, not Friday?
early Saturday. Saturday.
I must have missed it.
This is our 12th month, so again, ideally, we should get 100%. We finished up, 12 of this fiscal year's over. Our snow and use tax totaled $820,000 for the month of June. Of that amount, $695,000 was from sales and $125,000 was from use. It is down a little bit from last month, but our projected revenues that we did back in March or so, we're only 1.01% different, and it's for the good, than where we predicted to be to do the index for the service fixtures. We are a little higher than our monthly target, 4.8%, and compared to previous years, 12.23% and 20.64% in FY '21 and '20. We end the year with an embedded funds over a little over $3.7 million. And there were a couple, the budget amendment this month being, for this last fiscal year, just kind of had to account for some increased costs, such as fuel oil, such as some expensive equipment repairs and vehicle repairs. So we were a little over on a couple of departments, so that amendment satisfies that. Overall, though, we did pretty good. We still ended the year in a surplus situation. Let's see. Across the board, both in general fund and NPWA, revenues did exceed expenses, so that's why we ended up doing good. And just a note, in general fund, we did spend less than we budgeted to spend, by over $1 million. Our expense percentage ended up at 93.47%, and the revenues brought in $450,000 more than we budgeted for. PWA was the same thing. We earned $426,000 more than we expected, and expenses were only at 98.66% there. A quick rundown of our balances are as follows. General fund is $3.6 million. Capital improvement is $1.9 million. Economic development is $38,000. Cemetery care fund is $65,000. Parks capital improvement is $82,000. Fire station fund is now at $1.9 million. Admin and tech fund is $113,000. Grant cost share fund is at $1.9 million. Fire department tax fund, that little half cent, contributed almost $1.2 million. We spent $2.8 million to operate that department. The PWA fund is $2.8 million. Water impact fee is $1.1 million. Sewer impact fee is $1.2 million. The wastewater plant fund is now at $3.6 million. $930,000 of this is our ARPA money, which was approved last month to fund equipment and vehicles for the city. So that money will be moved to general fund. $223,000 is from OEDPF generic program that she found for us. Transportation impact fee is $155,000, which brought in twice as much as what we expected. Some of our developments are paying the impact fee for their whole development. Some are doing it by house, some are doing it by homeowner. And all the funds combined are 18.4 million. Are there any questions for me? Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Tina. Item number 10, general manager's comments.
Just a couple of things on the water department side. Spoke with Kenny Sullivan this morning. We have a meeting scheduled with Wall Engineering on the 20th of this month regarding the wastewater treatment facility to finalize some details on the building out there. Once that is done, we'll have another meeting shortly thereafter, just to tweak a few things, and then the plans will be sent off to DEQ. So I'm hopeful that these plans are headed to DEQ by the first, second week of August. Maybe 3, 4, 6 months potentially at DEQ, and then we should be ready to go out to bid. So one other thing is we've had some water pressure issues on the southwest side and south side. Last week, the water department put in a portable pump at Rockwell and 130 to pressure the 12-inch line that is going west, and it also pressures up the line that goes to the east and then heads south on the Country Club on that 12-inch line. I know that the main area that was having issues was Pachella off of 76. It has resolved that area. The superintendent has been keeping in contact with one particular resident in that area that was having some complaints, and that resident says that it's doing much, much better. I know it's doing a lot better in my neighborhood. It was horrible. Whether that pump has anything to do with it or not, I don't know. I know the Oaks is doing a lot better as well, down there where Jeanette's at. So potentially this will be a resolution. If it is, then we may need to put in a permanent booster station to pressure that up. Although we do still have some lines that are way too small that I think would resolve the issue without having to use a booster station. I'm not an engineer and I'm not a water superintendent, but I still think it would help tremendously to do that. So we'll be looking at those things as well, getting meetings with Kenny and Luke as well to see if we can figure out where those lines need to be upsized immediately, the priorities that we're going to use that ARPA funds for. So,
Maybe good timing.
yeah, that's all I have, Mayor.
All right, item number 11, any trustee comments? All right, item number 12 is adjournment.
Make a motion for adjournment.
Motion and second for adjournment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. This time I'll call the July 11th, 2022 meeting of the Newcastle City Council to order. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Carl Nell.
Here.
Mike Fullerton.
Here.
Tony Clay.
Here.
Gene Reed.
Here.
Marcy White.
Item number 2, discussion and possible action on approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion second for approval of the agenda.
Mike Fullerton.
Yes.
Tony Clay.
Yes.
Gene Reed.
Yes.
Marcy White. Carl Nell.
Yes. Item number 3, citizens' comments. This is an opportunity for any citizen of the city of Newcastle to comment on anything related to the city of Newcastle that is not on the agenda. I remind any potential citizens that wish to comment that all speakers shall clearly state their name and address for the record. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person with only one speaking opportunity. Council members will not respond to comments or questions. The mayor may end comment period at his discretion, and prior authorization is required to distribution materials or to approach the council. This time, is there any citizen comment related to the city of Newcastle? Seeing none, move to item number 4, consent agenda. Are there any items of consent agenda any member of council desire to be removed and addressed individually? Seeing none, item number 4, consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Motion second for approval of the consent agenda.
Mike Fullerton.
Yes.
Tony Clay.
Yes.
Gene Reed.
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes. Item number 5, discussion and possible action from any items removed from the consent agenda, be no action on that agenda item. Item number 6, discussion and possible action on recommendation of planning commission. Item 6A, public hearing, discussion and possible action regarding an application for rezoning from A agriculture to E1 suburban estate residential for the Peeper Family Trust located in the southwest quarter of southwest quarter, section 18, township 9 north, range 4 west of Plain County, Oklahoma, and for adoption of ordinance number 914, property location 700 feet north of Fox Street on the east side of County Line Road, Newcastle, Oklahoma, case number R2022-006.
Good evening, Shanae Greenlee with the Planning Department. As you stated, item 6A, resolution 2022-006 is the request for rezoning from general agricultural to E1 suburban estate residential. This is the subject tract here. As you can see right now, the configuration is approximately a 1 acre and a 3 acre tract, which does not conform with the lot area requirement in general agriculture, which is 5 acres. The Peeper Family Trust own this property, and this what they want to do is they want to bring it into conformance, so take it out of the agricultural zoning and put it into E1, which is the 80,000 square feet minimum requirement. They are going to rezone. If approved, they will do a warranty deed lot split approval for 2 2-acre tracts, which exceeds that 80,000 square feet minimum in the E1 district. Planning staff and Planning Commission did support and recommend approval of R 2022-006. The applicant is here if you have any specific questions, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
We have several of these. I thank the planning department on catching these and making sure we're getting these things taken care of that weren't taken care of years ago. So doing it the right way.
I have a question.
With the rezoning, we will require 50-foot easement off of each section line road
Okay,
associated with that.
okay. We can put that in, and that's something that I do need to clarify and discuss on that ordinance that was approved March 8th of 2021 on the language on that. It's a 50-foot easement on any rezoning, is that correct? Okay. Or is it subdivision?
Any rezoning it, because that, we did this exact same thing on 32nd Street Southeast.
Okay,
When they went to a 5-acre tract, they broke a piece off and went to that 5-acre tract.
I did receive that ordinance tonight. I got a hard copy of that. I would like to discuss it and make sure that we're following exactly what that says. I did bring that hard copy with me, if you want to take a look at it. In my interpretation, it talks about subdivision. The actual ordinance does, subdivision of property. So if we want to do that, I think that we need to just make sure that that ordinance is written the way that we can enforce it.
I think
Just one second.
part of the goal when doing that was there was some question relating to it, and somebody was dividing property, splitting off an area into a E2 or I think it was E2 zoning, and there was a question as to the 50-foot. And so it may have been written anytime there was a division of property. It wasn't meaning that it was a subdivision, but it was anytime there was a lot split.
Yes, sir.
But
And I guess within compliance with the subdivision.
that was what the intent was. And if we need to clean it up and make sure that any time that it is a rezoning to anything other than agriculture maybe, that's required, or any type of land division.
Which if you wanted that, it could be both. I mean, you could say a rezoning and or subdivision or warranty deed lot split approval. I just want to make sure that, because I did not convey that to the applicant at this time. So, but if the ordinance requires it, then that's what the ordinance requires. And this is to clarify, it's for right-of-way, for road, not for, I think it says easement in there, but I just want to make sure it's for a roadway easement, correct?
Road
Or-
utilities.
Road and utilities,
Yes.
okay.
That would
Okay,
include.
that would be the intent.
Yes. Whenever we made an attempt to stab at trying to clarify that with this ordinance, apparently we didn't get it clear enough, but
Yeah, it looks like the language from the minutes does reference easement. It's not real crystal clear in the language in the ordinance. So you could fall back to defend it and say that the minutes helped clarify what the intention of council was, but my suggestion would be to come back and clean this up.
Okay.
there seems to attorney can take care of that.
We can help with that.
So then we will require the 50-foot roadway easement for this rezoning and future lot split warranty.
That would actually be to the benefit of the applicant, so you might just touch base with them. They may not have an objection anyway.
They are here.
I'm not sure what, I'm not hearing him real good. I'm not understanding exactly what he's saying.
It would be a 50-foot road and utility easement on the frontage of your property on Country Club.
Center of the road that's currently there.
Correct.
Correct.
Correct. That would include the 16 and a half feet that's
The
statutorily
statutory.
already there. So it'd be an additional 32 and a half feet.
Correct.
33.
33.
33 and a half.
33 and a half
33
feet.
and a half, whatever.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, I'll make a motion to approve case number R 2022-06, stipulating the 50-foot right-of-way easement off of the section line road.
Second.
Motion is second for approval of item number 6A, general point easement.
Mike Fullerton,
Yes.
Tommy Clay,
Yes.
Gene Lee.
Yes.
Marcy White. Earl Nell.
Yes. Item 6B, discussion and possible action on adoption of the emergency clause of ordinance 4914. Make a motion for approval of item number 6B. Motion second for approval of item number 6B.
Mike Fullerton,
Yes.
Tommy Clay,
Yes.
Gene Lee.
Yes.
Marcy White. Earl Nell.
Item number 6C, public hearing, discussion and possible action regarding an application for rezoning from A agriculture to E2 urban estate residential for Richmond and Peters located in the southwest quarter of section 22, township 9, north range 4 west, and in Meridian, McLean County, Oklahoma, and for adoption of ordinance number 915, property location 1205 South Dickerson, Newcastle, Oklahoma, case number R 2022-007.
This item is, again, a rezoning from ag to E2, urban estate residential. This is the property located on Dickerson Avenue. It's approximately about 10 acres. He has the frontage here on Dickerson, is what he's wanting to do is, if this rezoning is approved, as in the area, several other rezonings have been approved to the E2 district, is to divide this into 2 parcels. You have general agriculture around this area, but you also have a lot, let me go back to that. Just say, the state of Newcastle is here on the east side. You have several PUD tracts south of this, and like I said, you have some E2 here. The request is then to get the rezoning. If approved, then he will, like I said, divide this into 2 parcels, approximately a 5 and 4 acre parcel that will, like I said, meet the frontage requirements here on Dickerson Avenue.
Am I looking at this right? Is it on the southwest 16?
That, yes.
And close to Highway 62, that's that.
This
area
That's close to the property.
Yeah,
Okay,
this one here.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Okay, I was thinking
okay,
Dickerson is, comes off of Southwest 16.
Dickerson.
okay, that's what I was thinking. I pulled it up on
You
the.
does that Dickerson actually go?
It goes right here.
That
Yeah,
was the
it
next
goes
road
west
to
and then
the
it goes
west.
back up.
Oh,
So all that stays is Dickerson, even with that job.
Okay. Okay, there's a gate right here, right, to go into Dietrich's.
Jack's.
Jack's, yeah.
I didn't realize there was a road that went there.
Planning staff and planning commission did support and recommend approval of R 2022-007. I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is here as well.
So this is different. You said, is it adjacent to the one we did last time? We did one last time too, right? Same, different from last time?
Planning commission recommended 3-0.
Oh, yeah, I'm trying to just remember, we did something for the same one last month, but it was a different property, not the same property that we did last. We did something with
Well, we
it.
discussed that large development coming in, and
Yeah.
one of the citizens who spoke.
Oh, that's
lived-
that same
lived-
piece of-
Lived on different.
Yeah,
Okay,
this was,
okay.
what you guys did last time was it was the preliminary, or was the PUD for Newcastle,
No, I see what you're
Farms.
saying now.
and what was discussed was the emergency access off of Dickerson.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. I'm with you.
We already somewhat committed off of Dickerson that's all we're going to.
Yeah, we have numerous lots of
I make a motion to approve item 16.
I'll second.
Motion second for approval of item number 6C.
Mike Fullerton,
Yes.
Tony Clay.
Yes.
Gene Reed.
Yes.
Marcy White. Carl Nell.
Yes. Item 6D, discussion of possible action on the adoption of the emergency clause of ordinance number 915.
I'll move to approve 6D.
Second.
Motion second for approval of item number 6D.
Mike Fullerton,
Yes.
Tony Clay.
Yes.
Gene Reed.
Yes.
Marcy White.
Yes. Item number 6C, public hearing discussion of possible action regarding an application for zoning to make agriculture to PUD plan unit zone for Vicky Sharon Saunders and Tommy Lloyd Saunders, trustees under the Vicky Saunders Living Trust, located in the northwest quarter of the northwest quarter of the southwest quarter, section 17, township 9 north, range 4 west Indian Meridian, McLean County, Oklahoma, for adoption of ordinance number 916, property address 6112 North Highway 76, Newcastle, Oklahoma, case number 2022-008.
As you stated, this request is of another rezoning from ag to a PUD this time. The reason that staff directed the applicant to go to a PUD is because he came in for a building permit, submitted a building permit for his barn that was at one time located up here in this general area adjacent to Highway 76. ODOT came in and took right of way here, thus they removed the barn. He came in for another application, building permit for another accessory structure, 1,500 square feet for an accessory structure located in front of the main dwelling, which is not allowed in ag. So instead of having him go through a rezoning and then go to the Board of Adjustment, we had him do a PUD to allow him to put the accessory structure in front of the main dwelling. And planning staff and planning commission did support and make recommendation of approval for R 2022-008.
Can you explain to me why we have that ordinance
Why we have which ordinance?
that does not allow accessory buildings?
Oh,
to be-
in ag?
You know, we have ag tracts that could be a half mile deep,
Mm-hmm,
and their house could be at the back of that half mile.
mm-hmm, Yeah.
And the fact that they could not build an accessory structure between the house and the road doesn't make a lot of sense.
it doesn't. And
So I think that's something I'd like to see readdressed for ag, because it's, when you have large tracts, people tend to build their houses quite a ways off the road, and to limit their ability to put outbuildings anywhere between their house and the road is kind of, it seems a little ridiculous.
I do know that other municipalities do treat ag differently, because you can have large barns, or you can have your livestock in front, and the position isn't, of the accessory structure isn't impactful as much in large agricultural tracts. Obviously, this was another one to bring it into conformance with the lot area, because it doesn't have the 5 acres, and but that is something that we can look into making amendments for as well.
Thank you.
Could I comment on that?
Absolutely.
Mayor, I think I agree with you totally on that. I do picture that we have a lot of 5 acre tracts that are agriculture, and it would probably should apply to them as well. However, many of those tracts are gonna start developing into residential and estate planning, I think. So it'd be nice to encourage those large permanent structures to take that into consideration. So would your thought be any different for the smaller, or any ag, or?
No, I mean, if they want to subdivide in the future, then they'll just have to deal with the fact that there's an accessory building out there to deal with. I mean,
They wouldn't be required to take it down or anything like that in order to rezone?
I wouldn't think so. It depends on what they rezoned to and where it was in relationship to the dwelling.
For instance, if it was a 5-acre tract and it was adjacent to some, E2, 1 acre, and they had the frontage, I think that unless we start going in and changing a bunch of things in the E districts with dwellings, accessory buildings not being able to be in front of the main dwelling and have to meeting that same setback as the main dwelling, I think that you're gonna get into some issues where you can't make something non-conforming. So I couldn't go in and divide and say that would be, they wouldn't be able to change it. So you'd have that, it'd basically be illegal non-conforming. So if they had an accessory structure in the front, they would just not be able to expand that accessory structure. They would not have to take it down, but they couldn't expand that footprint.
Or that I think would be a good instance for a PUD.
Right.
Rather than using a PUD in this instance because of, to get around the ag zoning issue. That I think with PUD, rather than doing straight zoning, would be more applicable.
I'm just trying to anticipate any unintended results from that, so.
Right. And you're correct, sir. That way, if they did the PUD, it would allow them to have that, expand that accessory structure if they wanted to. They just would have to write that in the PUD.
Thank you.
Motion for approval of item number 6E.
Second.
Motion second for approval of item 6E.
Mike Fullerton,
Yes.
Tommy Klein.
Yes.
Gene Reed.
Yes.
Marcy White. Yes. Carl Nell.
Yes. Item number 6F, discussion of possible action on adoption of emergency clause ordinance number 916.
Motion approved to include item 6F, emergency clause, ordinance 916.
Motion second for approval of item number 6F.
Tommy Klein.
Yes.
Mike Fullerton.
Yes.
Gene Reed.
Yes.
Marcy White. Carl Nell.
Yes. Item number 6G, discussion of possible action on final plat of Brush Creek, section 1.
Luke Day, city engineer. This is the final plat for the first section of Brush Creek. Let's see. This is 38 acres and 84 lots. This has a crossing over the floodplain through there, so there's a large culvert. So this is the first section. So a lot of these will be the collector streets that access the section line roads. Planning staff and planning commission recommend approval. The applicant and myself are here for any questions.
The only question I've got, and the primary question, and this was brought up at the planning commission as well, is, we've got a significant amount of common area or whatever you want to call it because of the deep creek running through Brush Creek. What in the world's going to happen with that? Who's going to be responsible for maintaining that? It's always had cattle grazing on it, which has been able to keep the vegetation down and keep it where it doesn't look too horrible. But, if that's just allowed to, if they're not going to use that as any type of parkland, and if they're going to just let that be what it is, I think that's going to create some issues.
Yeah, the plan is the common area be maintained by the HOA.
How much space is that? Is it a lot?
This portion is 16 acres.
Quite a
I'm
bit.
hesitant to dump that much on an HOA. I mean, I know we're about to talk a little bit more, and I'm okay with that respect, but that's not the same kind of stuff we're talking about.
Well, I mean, it's the only thing that can happen is to dump it on the HOA, but I just, are there going to be any guidelines of what they have to do, maintain that since it's in the middle of development? Are there going to be restrictions on, vegetation? Can there be 10-foot tall Johnson grass out there? Or I just foresee potential complaints in the future of the residents to the city that there may be some, it may be very unkept. And I may be all wet with this, but
Sure,
Okay.
that's valid.
Area service.
As far as the covenants go, do you have?
I do not think the covenants and restrictions from the neighborhood have been written yet, or at least I haven't seen them. I don't know if the city personally has an ordinance for length of grass before a complaint can be filed. For instance, Oklahoma City, I believe, is a foot. And as far as maintaining the 16 acres, the vast majority of it is creek, so top of bank would be the vast majority of that 16 acres. So I'd say, just rough estimate, maybe 6-7 acres of it would need to be maintained by the HOA, and the rest would be left naturally.
I'm just, you know,
How many houses will be in
84 with the first section.
Not a whole lot of houses to take on a lot of liability for
it'll
the
be
creek.
400 some odd houses by the time.
Oh, for the whole, if they're all in the combined HOA though. My only question is the amount of risk that they take on with that few houses. If something were to happen in that creek or something, that's a lot of money to spread between 84 houses. If there's something that happens with, well, I guess they have insurance, but I don't know.
So oh, sorry to cut you off.
No, you're okay.
In most cases, there's a certain number of lots or houses that need to be built and sold before the developer will dedicate the HOA.
Right.
So I believe, I don't know what that threshold is, but I
Usually about 70%.
70%.
Right.
Of the total development.
But it's all one HOA, right?
Right,
Yes.
and that's what I was gonna say. Is the intention to have it all of them one HOA, or each section has its own?
Yeah, and I believe there's 484 houses,
Okay, that's
or
not
lots
bad
in total.
Okay, if they're all one, that's not such a.
Anyway, I just want to throw that out there. Not that I have any objection other than that. I mean, we approved the development through preliminary. This is just a basically record keeping kind of with final planning, but that was my only concern.
I make a motion that you ready for a motion? Make a motion that we approve item 4H.
Thank you.
Item what?
6G.
Comment?
6G.
Oh. Right. I looked at the wrong,
I have to turn it and put it on the next page, right?
yeah. Do we ask for public comment?
Huh? I cannot. Any public comment concerning this agenda item?
Right. Now,
He got in trouble with that last time.
Yeah, I know. I yelled at him harshly.
Impact.
make a motion to approve item 6H.
G.
6G.
G. Man,
Go,
okay.
G.
There we go, there it is.
I'll second.
Motion second for approval of item 6G.
What happens when I turn the page over?
Yes.
Tommy Clark.
Yes.
Jim Reed.
Yes.
Marcy White. Yeah, Carl Nell.
Yes.
I was really wanting to get to Riverview, I
We're here.
say.
Item number 6H, discussion of possible action on final plat of Riverview Estates, mixed-use development, phase 1.
Yep, this is phase 1 of Riverview. This is a residential piece. 26 acres and 39 lots here. This matches the preliminary plat that was approved by Planning Commission and City Council with one minor revision. The drainage easement on a center lot, this lot right here, the designer was able to keep the creek closer to the southwest corner and create some more buildable space on that lot.
Very good.
But the applicant's here and myself to answer any additional questions.
Is that front area towards the front of it?
No, there's a,
Yeah.
so the highway would be on this key map, there's
Oh,
a space.
it's the one we rezoned though, right?
Yes.
It used to be all commercial, but we rezoned it.
I don't believe
It
so.
it was a
Yes.
PUD, yep.
Okay.
Well, I'm drawing a little bit of a blank. Riverview's been developed, been under construction for a long time, right? Several years?
Yes. So
And
this one sits right out in front of Riverview on the left side of the main road as you drive in.
Oh, so, now I'm with you. So Riverview Estates is what we're looking at here specifically.
Yes.
Okay.
And, yeah, this is, it was all commercial, they rezoned a portion of that front back to this mixed-use development, and so it's gonna add more houses.
And this is closer to the highway?
Yes, it's in
Closer
front,
to
in front of the
37?
existing 437, but not 237.
Okay.
And then, like I said, on the west side of the road as you go in, the main road.
Thank you. How many lots total?
39 lots.
22,500 square
Any public comment concerning this agenda item?
Make a motion to approve item 6H.
foot. Second.
Motion second for approval of item number 6H.
Mike Colvin,
Yes.
Lonnie Clay.
Yes.
Jim Reed,
Yes.
Marcy White, Carl Nell.
Yes. Item number 6I, discussion of possible action on final plat of Coachella, section 4.
So this is the next phase of Pulchella. Continues to the east. It is 48 acres and 57 lots. We've been through planning staff review and iteration, and planning commission and planning staff recommend approval. The applicant and myself are here for questions.
Any public comment concerning this agenda item? We will have section 5 at some point in the future. Yes. Right.
Make a motion to approve very, very soon.
Reggie?
Make a motion to approve item 6I.
Second.
Motion second for approval of item number 6I.
Mike Colvin,
Yes.
Lonnie Clay.
Yes.
Jim Reed,
Yes.
Marcy White, Carl Nell.
Yes. Thanks, sir.
Thank you
Item
very
number
much.
6J, discussion of possible action on adoption of ordinance number 917, amending the Newcastle Code of Ordinance, Title 15, Land Usage, Chapter 154, Planning and Zoning, Section 154.075, PDD, Plan Unit Development, adding language, clarify when preliminary plats are required. I did receive a phone call from the Planning Commission Chair earlier this evening. He is in full support of this. Planning Commission is in full support of this. He does potentially want to revisit it in the future, and he's concerned with the size of the land use development that requires this. Would like to see a larger size, but is very much in favor of approval as presented currently. You may want to revisit at some point in the future.
Thank you, sir. This ordinance amendment is just to clean up and kind of clarify when an applicant submits a rezoning request for a PUD. And in chapter 154, it kind of laid out the steps, but it did it by sequence. And when you're doing a PUD for 85 acres or 90 acres, you really need to have a preliminary plat to go along with that. And so this just clarifies that that preliminary plat is required at the time of a PUD submittal, a request for rezoning, along with the master development site plan. There's a lot of things in the ordinance that are required that applicants haven't been used to submitting, and they're getting used to it now. This just clarifies it, so we have that language built in there to require that preliminary plat with the PUD application. I'm happy to answer any questions. And yes, we can revisit the amount, the acreage requirement when that kicks in as well.
And I want to commend Janae and her staff. For years and years, we found these issues with our ordinance. It was, well, we need to address this, we need to address this, and Janae is addressing them, bringing them to us, we're getting these things changed, instead of going, 2 years later, oh gosh, here's another one that's applicable to, and we didn't address it, so keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Get things
I appreciate that. So does the staff. They all work very hard.
Well, I was gonna comment on this later, but there's also your staff reports are remarkable. They're remarkably helpful to us, to me anyway. I'm sure everyone agrees, so that sure makes our processing a lot more effective.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Make a motion to approve item 6J.
Second.
Motion second for approval of item 6J.
Mike Fullerton,
Yes.
Tommy Clay,
Yes.
Gene Reed,
Yes.
Marcy White, Earl Ness.
Yes. Item 6K, discussion of possible action on adoption of emergency clause ordinance number 917. Make a motion for approval of item 6K.
Second.
Motion second for approval of item 6K.
Mike Fullerton,
Yes.
Tommy Clay,
Yes.
Gene Reed,
Yes.
Marcy White, Earl Ness.
Yes. Item number 6L, discussion of possible action on adoption of ordinance number 918, amending the Newcastle Code ordinance, Title 15, land usage, Chapter 153, subdivision, Section 53.059, parks, open spaces, and natural features, by removing existing language and replacing it with more clearly defined standards for parks and open spaces in subdivisions of more than 10 acres. Once again, I did receive some feedback from the planning commission on this item as well. He would like to see some potential changes. He's fully in support of this, but he's also going to revisit this, he feels, in an effort to maybe work to get more area that is maintainable in the open spaces that are required.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Again, this ordinance is a cleanup. We only had 2% requirement of parkland. We do currently now. And we're moving that up. Anything over 10 acres or more, they need to provide not less than 10%. This is very similar to surrounding communities. And they will dedicate that to the homeowners association for use as parks and open spaces. And the land will be maintained by the HOA with public use and access. So it doesn't limit, just like Windermere Park. It's in Windermere, but anybody within anywhere can go to visit that park, and which is similar to most other communities in the area. We did add in several things. The access, that they have to be within an easy and safe walking distance of all dwelling units. Topography, it has to meet the requirements of this article and suitable for parks and open spaces. So we won't have a riparian area be their open space, and it won't be allowed to be accounted for that. They can use that for their drainage, but it won't be part of that 10% requirement. Unity dedicated land should form a single parcel, not having several common areas that are drainage areas. And then the shape of the land, whether you're going to do softball, tennis, or passive recreation, or have, an actual park with playground equipment, and then the location as well. The main thing with this is it increases that requirement and then requires them to actually have a type of maintainable park that will be usable for its residents. Happy to answer any
You
questions.
mentioned the revision.
Yes, we did revise for with public use and access in the ordinance. What was previously in your packets didn't have that. When I was reviewing it today, we wanted to make sure that it does have that in there so it's clear for any development that comes through.
So then, do we want any of our developers to have an option to contribute to other parks, or do we always want them to have their park there on the side?
Well, I am very interested in doing a fee in lieu of, which would make a parkland dedication fund. I started to review a couple other municipalities. It gets into quite a formula of what that land is worth, how much land is required, if it's 10%, what's a fair amount. I mean, it's quite a lengthy.
They don't want to use the same value they're putting on it to charge people. less.
Correct.
Well, at
Just figure.
least this way we have a park
Correct.
site at each of the developments. So.
Right, and, it would say, let's use Pedras for an example. It's, 32 lots, and they have one common open space. That's their detention area, but it's usable. They have a park bench, so that's a little bit of an anomaly, because it's such a upscale development right there. But, If they didn't want to do a park and dedicate 10%, they could do that fee in lieu of, it would go into a parkland fund, and then that could be used to improve all the city parks. So,
Or if you sit right at a city park next door to it, I don't know that we
Yeah.
have that,
But
I
if you
see what
did,
mean.
yeah.
You go, yeah, but do we really need another one that's right there?
right, right, right.
So it gives us that flexibility if needed.
Yes, and I hope to, in the future, definitely will bring that forward. But I just, at this point, wanted to get that increase from the 2% to 10%, and then make it, have them, have some guidelines on what they have to, on what kind of land is suitable for parkland.
What kind of effect will this have? Like, is there anybody that's already, well, obviously we've approved flats, but is there anybody that's in the middle of a flat that's gonna have to revamp their stuff, or, do we know? Like, how does that take effect depending on where they're at in the process?
Right. But once that preliminary plat is approved, then we cannot go back. And like right now, a good example actually would be Newcastle Farms, because of the PUD went ahead and went through and got approval. So the preliminary plat, which was written in the PUD, that they have to follow all of the ODOT recommendations and adhere to that. At this point, because the PUD was already approved, we wouldn't make them go back. And we didn't have any new submissions for plat review in July, so right now it's a really good time.
I just didn't know if there's anybody that we need to call and go, hey,
Yeah.
just so
Hey, you know,
you're
right.
probably starting to draw this up, but you gotta, you know, just a heads up.
Council questions?
I'm sure the developers weren't just excited about this, or they even, did any of them know about it?
I've mentioned it to several of the developers. I don't think that I'm getting much pushback on it.
I like it, I just. know it-
Or but they're used to it in other cities most of the time?
Yes, yeah, 2% is pretty minimal.
So an 80-acre development would have at least 8 acres of park.
Correct.
That's quite a bit.
And as we develop and our people see all this development, I think that's kind of a plus. That's kind of a nice thing to say.
If you look at existing, I mean, you know, Windermere is quite a large development, and it's only has a park that's pretty suitable for that area, and of course, it's adjacent to Veterans Park. But if you look at other developments that don't have that, you'll be able to start to see the difference.
Good.
Farmington would be one, Brush Creek, Bradford.
You may have already said this too, maybe I missed it, but because you and I haven't had a chance to really talk about this one, what is the definition of park? What's the definition of parkland in these developments? Or
I guess the
description?
description would be that it has to be something that is usable. I go back here, and that might be something that we need to do, is make a clear definition that I have to bring forward. That's a very good point.
Well, it's or open spaces.
It's for parks, open spaces, and natural features. The land to be dedicated to meet the requirements of this article shall be suitable for parks and open spaces and recreational activities. So I guess it's gonna be kind of discretionary when we do plat review, when they come in and they show an area that's in a riparian area and they say that's gonna be park, that's really not a suitable, that's gonna be your drainage, that's not gonna be park. But you have a very good point, sir. We should probably clean up our definition on parks and open spaces and bring that forward.
Some parks are very passive and some are very.
Or rec,
active.
uh-huh.
And I think we're probably, I mean, for each of them, but
10%'s a lot. Is that, when you say it's comparable, what are the surrounding
Yeah.
communities?
I don't
10% is a
have,
lot.
yeah, I don't have that right in front of me right now. I don't want to give you information that I have not recalled. I know that Norman is about 10%. I know that Edmond is, I think Edmond is about 10%. Not sure about Tuttle, Blanchard, Oklahoma City.
So that definition, and that's what I was getting at too, is you know, if it's open space, nature, whatever, that drives the cost of what it is going to affect the developer as well. If we're talking about parkland where they have to put in equipment and this and that and whatever.
I don't think that's what we're talking about.
No,
So it
not,
could be a number of
Not
things.
necessarily.
it could be a
Make
number
open
of things.
spaces. It's
And
just
I don't-
green space that
Yeah.
is natural green space that people could, but it's usable
Chunk of
for,
unusable
Yeah,
land.
it's giving up a lot of land.
My biggest, I know 2% is low, I think 10% is pretty high. I don't,
You want to change it and go to 8% or something like that, or do,
I would be interested just knowing, like, a list of who has what around us in comparable areas or where we're headed, since we're one of the fastest growing cities in the state now, where they're at compared to where we're at, so we can see what that might look like.
you know, in some of these areas like Rush Creek where there's a natural unbuildable area, that's pretty easy open space. If you've got across the street here in Farmington and you've got an 80-acre tract that's being developed, 8 acres in the middle of 80 acres is a big piece of land. 5 acres would be a pretty good chunk of land. 5 acres for a park in the middle of an 80-acre flat development, that the rest of the development was being utilized is a pretty big chunk of land. So that's what I mean,
There
And
again,
that's-
if it was a,
Well,
if it was a trail that ran through the neighborhood that totaled out 5 acres,
Right,
and that'd make a huge difference too, or something.
well, but if it,
right.
my understanding, I know it talks about being together, but on something like that, I would think we would be perfectly fine with, like, you've got an 8 acre to be able to have half of it over here, half of it over there. I mean, it's gotta be
course.
not, I think the intent of it is not to have a whole bunch of little bitty drainage areas that add up to the acreage you're talking about. And so a bigger complex could have multiple green spaces around. But, I mean, that's why I was curious what the developers are saying. And I'm very curious to know what the Mustangs, Yukons, Piedmonts,
Would you have any way of knowing if this is how this fits in with our comprehensive plan that's developing? I mean, are people expressing interest in more or less, or,
I love the idea of more in a neighborhood. I think the more green space you have, it makes a huge difference in a neighborhood versus just being all right up on top of each other, but.
I think that's actually been talked about in our comp plan.
yeah, and it
meetings.
is something that on the community feedback and stakeholder, that they'd like to see more parks, more recreational areas, more community recreation. Now, this is obviously done with the private development, but like I said, it's gonna be dedicated to the HOA, but yet usable by the general public.
So,
I'm happy to,
I'm sorry, I was just, when we talk about it has to be open to public, how does that work in gated communities?
well, gated community would be different. So if you're not a gated community, it's
Right.
gonna be a little bit different.
But if you're gonna be requiring like a pathway,
Connection,
yeah, from outside the gate in, but I wouldn't want that. Because gated communities are designed to.
but it sounds like I've got a little bit of work to do. I'm happy to come back next month and
that'd be
get
awesome.
a definition. I'm happy to get a definition, and then, like you said, Mustang, Piedmont, Yukon. Does anybody else have any other surrounding cities they want me to take a look
I
at?
look at something outside. I look at something outside there too, a lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
different places
Okay.
like that.
Yeah, just,
I was trying to think of similar communities that maybe that are 10 years ahead of where we are now, but 10 or 15.
also would be a good one.
Yeah.
You know, I think we absolutely need to do more than we're doing now. I just don't know that, I mean, 5% is more than what I would prefer, but
Well, I
I'm
will-
convinced to.
I will say, so and it's at the preliminary plat stage and the PUD stage that we would be looking at that. Again, that's why that's so critical that those move along together, because you can have one thing written in the PUD and then they bring something else that's not really reflected in the
there
preliminary
again,
plat.
if 10% took, if that's too big of a chunk, if they did have that alternate option, or did have that option.
For fee in lieu
to
of.
contribute to other Yeah, in lieu of, that might be less expensive for them than to lose an entire lot or two.
We're all a
But
portion
might still be real good for the city, so.
I'll try to, I can see if I can get some information on that and see in lieu of, like I said, what I've looked at so far is,
how in Texas we get.
it is, and it was written a long time ago. I need to find some good examples. But I can come back next month and give you a new ordinance that also will give you a little bit of feedback with knowing what other communities are doing as far as providing parkland.
All right, I appreciate it very much. You know, action
Yes,
on
sir.
item number 6M. Item number 7 is being continued. I'll make a motion to continue item number 7. The next regularly scheduled meeting.
Second.
Motion second for continuance.
Mike Collier,
Yes.
Tommy Klein,
Yes.
Gene Reed,
Yes.
Marcy Ball, yes, Carl Nell.
Yes. Item number 8, discussion continued regarding driveway permit and processing.
Okay, so the last meeting, we were tasked with reaching out to surrounding communities and get a feel for how they operate when it comes to driveways and culverts. What we found was we're generally along the same design criteria. You know, there's little differences here or there, but generally it's the same. The approach to how we, go on site and look at a reasonable, we call it a reasonableness survey, look at surrounding culverts and that, and try to come up with a common sense size, apply engineering judgment. That was along the same lines as everybody we spoke with. I guess moving forward, my suggested solution would be to come up with some type of a table that would make, design assumptions, but the bottom line is to get a general feel for the acreage and the watershed acreage and the size of culvert we would need based on the amount of flow going to it. Then we could, work off of that, kind of make it more straightforward for folks building driveways.
Could we come up with I know that this whole thing, going back, was about engineering, about having to hire an engineer to design. Is there a reasonable amount of flow that would make something where we feel that it needs more professional? Does that make sense? Could that be judged that way, where there's
Oh.
I mean, I think they need to have something that they have a clear,
Yeah.
this is when we gotta do this is
Right.
when we got. I think discretionary is gonna be tough, and I don't know if you could do it in there's just an amount of flow per.
Well, I wonder if it might, it might be whether or not they have to build an RCD box for drain.
What was the first part, Mike? I'm sorry.
An RCD box,
Yeah.
if they had to build that versus him to have a pipe installed. It's a little more common.
So from our perspective, we would just look at square foot of opening. If they want to use a box to get there or a couple culverts side by side, I think we ought to leave that probably up to the
And then just look at the
homeowner.
flow, so the culvert, the watershed acreage, if you hit a certain point, then we would say, I don't even know what terms to use, but from this point forward, this amount, you would need a professional engineer to do it. If it's below this is what we're looking for, and you can do that with or without an engineer.
And that would generally take care of itself with the floodplain, because that's your large flows typically, and we would have to get an engineer to do that anyway.
So we're back to, if I'm understanding this right, we're back to where our city goes out and gives a recommendation on the size of the pipe instead of requiring an engineer to do it, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We had talked about having a stipulation to require an engineer for certain.
Up to a certain, the
Threshold.
real large flows and on section line roads, I mean, we'd want to have those looked at. But that would generally, you know, be floodplain, FEMA floodplain areas, and we have to require that anyway.
So the situation that kind of sparked this all, was that in the FEMA floodplain area?
Mm-hmm.
So by FEMA standards, it would require engineers.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Talking, yeah, so.
Probably the smoothest path there would be what's called a no-rise certificate, which would, you know, you get an engineer to model it and say that this driveway has a no-rise impact on the floodplain.
And that would preclude them from needing an actual engineering stuff, having to do with the engineering, if they said, I don't know as much about it, so you have to help me there.
FEMA would require an engineered seal on a no-rise.
Oh, okay, see, that's what I didn't understand, okay, I hear you now.
So that one is going to require an engineered stamp no matter no matter what our ordinance is.
Mm-hmm. So
But they're in the building box, if I remember correctly on that one, right?
I'm not sure what their plan was. I haven't seen any submittal really, just a
Okay.
phone call.
Is that still, right, are we holding off to decide something, or did that, I don't remember that one.
Well, I think we're requiring them to do that because it is FEMA. Floodplain requires it, so.
Yeah,
And we're working through one that, you know, we've inherited from the past. I mean, that FEMA watches this stuff.
sure.
And it's a little bit off topic, but it relates very closely. I think you should share a little bit of that as well,
Okay.
because it's not good.
Another location in town, it was allowed for a driveway to be placed in a FEMA floodplain, and so that required fill, right? And what happened was FEMA saw that and cited us, so we're working through that.
And this was back in
While back.
2009.
03, 04,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
way back when. Yeah, and they just now called us on this deal.
So they caught us, so now we're having to design it and probably going to have to rebuild the driveway for it.
Because the city approved it.
Right.
I'm just curious, what's an example how FEMA catches?
Oh, that's what, you know, when they redo their map.
Aerial
Do they
photo.
come looking, or is it usually someone raises a complaint?
There's a multitude of things that would trigger them to look into certain places. This one in particular, their elevation is out of the floodplain, so the new property owner petitioned to FEMA to remap the floodplain there, so they didn't have to pay flood insurance. Well, the way the previous the seller got out of the floodplain was fill. So we don't want to repeat that.
This is why we.
That's why we appreciate you.
Is that about you?
Keep that nodding.
Have they already billed us for that fine?
No.
Not yet.
Do
So
we know how much it's gonna be?
Yeah, gee, funny
The
talking.
treasurer asked.
is that
Is it bad?
it?
It's not good, I'm sure.
The cost of reading.
So right, the
It'll
cost
be
to
expensive.
remediate.
We can talk about that later.
To remediate. We haven't been fined, but
We can talk about that.
these are the actions you need to take, and so
Take
we're
it
working
away.
through the
Fix your car.
remediation. Yeah.
Yep. You gotta change one piece of land for another piece of land.
Okay.
Alright, so I guess I think that as long as, like Tommy said, we're still up until that point, we're still just kind of going out there, giving them an eyeball, this is what we think we need, and
Mhm.
so we don't have everybody screaming once for the driveway and then requiring engineers, so. That's good.
Okay.
All right, Peter, action.
Thank you.
Item number 8, thank you. Item number 9, discussion of possible action on redistricting council awards
Make a motion to approve item number 9
Second.
with selection of proposal number.
with selection of proposal number 2.
Second.
There you go.
Motion second for approval item number 9, selection of proposal number 2.
Mike Fullerton.
Yes.
Tommy Clark.
Yes.
Gene Reed.
Yes.
Marcy White. Yes.
Yes. City manager's comments?
The only one thing that I wanted to mention was that TAP grant potentially that we're eyeballing at this point, and there are multiple things there that I think we could qualify for. Potentially, one of the things that one of my priorities that I'd like to see would be sidewalks all the way down 10th Street to Country Club that comes down to the east and ties into our trails, lets the kids cross on to school, which I know that would be covered. But then we also have trails that could go throughout the park. There's just lighting, just a lot of different things that we could apply for and see if we get. But like I said in my report to council, we still have some time here. The application's not due till September 30th. That's drop date. So we're going to be discussing that here over the next 2 or 3 weeks and hopefully come back to council in August with some sort of proposal as to what we'd like to apply for.
What's CAP stand for?
Transportation Alternative Program. And it's administered by ODOT.
That we were talking about in the meeting. We need to watch the point, how they do the points, rate them. 'Cause I know like Oklahoma City and Norman and Moore got into this big argument. Well, we did it this way, but we did it this way, and and I think it was Oklahoma City that followed the plan and Norman didn't.
No.
You write your grades towards the spec of the scoring, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, right.
And that was the reason they didn't have as many sidewalks or didn't have the pathways or whatever they want, versus a sidewalk.
Anything else?
I guess one other thing is too, and I don't know how many council members got to see the lovely small ponds that run through Stonebrook Drive down in the Stonebrook addition, but that was caused by the dump trucks going through there with loads and absolutely destroyed the roadway.
Stonebrook.
It's down at our into the States off Highway 9, Penn.
Oh, yeah. Oh, really?
Street department should be out of there by tomorrow with past jobs they're doing, but, we're gonna have to go back in and redo the.
Is that from the bridge work? From the bridge?
No, it has to do with, an individual that is building on Southeast 40th and Western down there, and, I won't go any further because we have a meeting with that individual tomorrow. See where we come out on that, but, we are gonna have to spend some money on Stonebrook Drive, 1,800 to 2,000 feet of roadway that's gonna have to be replaced. And we didn't budget for it.
Now, but part of the reason we feel is because that we found that road wasn't built to standards.
That's absolutely correct, yes.
Wasn't built to standards, however, it functioned perfectly fine for 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, I know, I get that, but I'm just saying that's part of this goes back to my very thankful of our planning and oversight that we have, and accountability that we have now, that we're moving forward. A lot of these things that are sneaking up and biting us in the butt.
Yes.
Because it wouldn't, now granted, I think we still would have had some issues with those trucks on that road. Wouldn't have been near what it is. I mean, that just turned it into freaking powder.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad.
It appears that, looking at it, that we had the appropriate depth of asphalt on the edges of the road, but we did not in the middle. So.
And I'm sure the developer himself didn't, it was a sub that was brought in that did it. I mean, I'm not, but that's where inspections and oversight come into play.
All right, is that it? All right. Item number 11, any council member comments?
I had asked a while back about the possibility on Main Street there, about creating some markings on the road. I know I was trying to get with ODOT, but on some of our, like when we have the condos or the apartments that come right out by the donut shop, the traffic, and of course traffic, people block that intersection constant about being able to put people, and I mentioned like over by Walmart, you have this block out area that kind of in the road painted out that reminds people, don't block the intersection here, but stop. The possibility of doing that to help traffic and help those citizens be able to get onto the road, which is just, I mean, it's really hard to get up to get in and out over there.
Luke, would you be able to check with ODOT on that for Highway 62 out here, see if that's allowable?
Where exactly are you at?
Well, you know where,
One would be 9th Street.
okay, you know what I'm talking about? I
It's the
mean,
condos with.
there's a couple of spots there that are like that, but it's just along there. It's just,
Along the east side of Main Street, south of
Yep.
Sonic,
yep, yep,
and south of the Chamber.
yep.
And you're asking about,
So-
marking on the highway? or
Marking on the
private
highway,
property?
marking on the highway. At Walmart over at 140,
Oh,
you had a,
not
you-
to the light.
Yeah.
Stop
You're
lines.
talking about the traffic on Main
Yeah,
Street.
yes.
Not coming
No,
out of.
I wanted to-
that
I
they're
want- yes.
Gridlocking that.
yes,
Okay.
allow,
Kind of like.
just having some visual look, don't be an idiot. Just,
Either there or on the private property too, or on the right of way.
Any signage.
I don't think that's an MUTCD.
That'd go over well.
And you know who you are.
I mean, it's just, there's just common courtesy to it.
I heard good things about, I mean, my observation was excellent about July 2nd.
Yeah,
And I hope everybody else.
it's hot.
It was hot, but again, proud of our parks folks, and it was a good event. To me, like, the people I talked to just loved it.
The finale was really good. So whoever did the fireworks did good. Do we have an update on anything with the ridge yet?
No, we do not. They're still working on their SOQ.
I've got the draft started. I'll get there. It was a busy month, obviously, with how much we're.
Any other council member comments? Item number 12 is adjournment.
Make a motion for adjournment.
Can I address the council, please? No, sir, we don't have, we had a time at the beginning of our meeting for public comment.
Oh, yes.
Yes, it's at the beginning of every meeting.
That's at 7 o'clock?
Huh?
That's at 7 o'clock?
Starts at 6,
It starts at 6?
for the public works, yes, and then we go.
They
from
told me
public-
at 7 o'clock over at City Hall.
Yeah, so, but feel free to stay after and visit individual council members should you choose. All right, have a motion.
Second.
Motion second for adjournment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.